This isn't going to be a traditional review. If you're looking for a recommendation on whether or not to buy Guardians of Middle-earth, the answer is a hard no. It's a competitive-focused game whose community has been dead for half a decade. The only thing you can reliably do now is play with bots. And playing with bots is exactly what I did. Let's consider this more of a look back at what Guardians of Middle-earth was. Due to the game's highly derivative nature, I think I need to give a brief overview of what MOBAs are for the uninformed. The term multiplayer online battle arena seems like it would cover such a large variety of games, but when people use it, they're more than likely talking about League of Legends, Dota 2, or one of the dozens of games that they have inspired. Imagine that you're playing a tower defense game. Your turrets are set up to defend your base against wave after wave of fodder enemies. MOBAs are kinda like tower defense games, except there will be two sides simultaneously attacking and defending. And instead of being a commander who oversees the construction of towers and fortifications, you play as one of the units in the fray. I'll use League of Legends as my template here, as it's the MOBA I'm most familiar with. There are 3 different lanes on the map, where the fodder, known as minions, will endlessly charge through to tear down your defenses. Your team of 5 will have to distribute yourselves across these 3 lanes in order to stop the waves. As you kill more and more waves, you accumulate more and more income to buy items, as well as experience points. Eventually you'll hit a point with your items and levels that you'll be powerful enough to mobilize your team to try to make a final push down one lane and end the game. Yeah, there's obviously a lot more nuance to it than that, but that should be enough to get us started talking about Guardians of Middle-earth. It was developed by Monolith Studios and first released back on consoles in December of 2012. That's right, released on consoles. The incredibly click-heavy and precision-demanding genre needed to find a way to boil its systems down so that they could be played on a controller. Guardians definitely made some concessions to get this to happen, but man am I blown away by how stellar of a job they did. For the record, I'm playing the PC version, which released a year later, but I decided that reviewing this game with a controller was the only possible way to give it justice, because it's clear that this is how the game was designed. You move around with the left analog stick, which is pretty standard. It's the right analog stick where they make some interesting decisions. Rather than moving your camera around, the right analog stick acts as an aiming reticle that is constantly displayed under your character. Pressing right trigger will attack wherever your reticle is set to. Hitting one of the face buttons will change what reticle is under you to correspond with a different attack, which can then be executed with the right trigger. All in all, it's a pretty seamless transition from mouse and keyboard to controller, and I'm still in awe of just how quickly I was able to pick it up even after thousands of hours of playing MOBAs on PC. One of the major changes that they made to the game to make it work more smoothly on a controller is removing items from the game entirely. In most MOBAs, you're going to be fiddling around in menus as you acquire currency to pick which items you want to buy. Guardians uses what's called the belt system. It's a loadout that you can set at the start of the game that includes stat bonuses as well as some active abilities you can trigger during the match. It's a decent alternative, though a lot of the depth of the item system is lost because you can't adapt what loadout you want as the game progresses, or in response to what the enemy team is. Another change the control scheme brought is that all characters attack within a certain area for their basic attacks, rather than just at a single minion. This prevents you from having to be incredibly precise with your swings, which has the additional consequence of making it so that all characters can easily push a wave. Good wave clearers, as they're called in other MOBAs, are actually a character archetype, but here everyone has that capability. I'm sure this would inform how high-level play happened in Guardians, but for my purposes, it didn't really change all that much beyond the lower skill floor that it has. A MOBA really lives and dies on its characters. Your basics are covered here in all their high fantasy glory. You got your archers, your tanks, your warriors, etc. Design-wise, they're all passable. I don't think that the kits they're given really surpass the heights that this genre has already seen. For example, I had a good time playing Bilbo Baggins. He's a stealth character who can sacrifice some defense for some bonus offense, as well as cut people up by teleporting with his ultimate attack. But strangely, he also has the ability to taunt enemies and force them to attack him. Seems like an incredibly disjointed inclusion, considering the rest of his toolkit is so offense-based and designed to give him ways to circumvent his frailty. There are a few different maps in the game, most of which are 3 lanes. There is a 1-lane map as well, but the focus here is on the traditional 3-lane style. It's the bread and butter of the genre. In between each lane, there are health pickups, which prevent you from having to go back to base too often to heal up, as well as some other stat bonuses. There are neutral enemy camps within the in-between as well, but they're team-based objectives, and I could never really get my AI teammates to cooperate with me to take them down. One addition that this game makes to the formula is the ability to fortify your towers with different buffs. For example, you can choose to have your towers send out weaker damaging bolts, but split them between 2 enemies. It seems like a really interesting direction to take decision making in the genre, rather than having it all be character focused, to instead make decisions on the map itself. It's so obvious too. I mean, MOBAs are freaking tower defense games, like I mentioned before. Why not play that up a little bit? I'm surprised that this hasn't been explored in any of Guardian's competitors, or at least not the ones that I've played. The best change that was made was the removal of last hitting. Ugh, I could not be happier. For the uninformed, last hitting is a concept that exists in MOBAs that demands that you be the last attack on an enemy minion in order to get the gold from its corpse. Since gold has obviously been removed from the game, there is no need to worry about that here. You can instead swing wildly at the opposing creeps without worrying about dealing the last sliver of health. This was probably a change made to better fit the control scheme, rather than any inspired design decision, but boy am I glad it's gone anyway. Last hitting is just such a strange concept to me. The first 99% of damage dealt to a minion means absolutely nothing, compared to the last 1%. Sure, it adds skill to the game, but is it really an interesting or fun skill? Not for me. Losing this aspect frees you up to focus on other pressing things, like your positioning, or your moveset. All in all, I think ditching it was a smart choice. I spent most of my time running amok around the map and killing everyone while my team held down the fort. Probably not a super accurate representation of how the game is supposed to be played, but it's tough to ignore that all of my allies and enemies were AI that were nowhere near complex enough to handle the intricacies of what's going on here. It's a real shame that the game is dead. This death didn't just come recently, though. Within a few months of the game being released, there were already talks of an extremely low player base. I speculate that one of the biggest reasons that this is the case is that Guardians of Middle-earth was not free to play, unlike nearly all of its competitors. Not only was there an initial cost, there were still characters on top of that that you needed to buy as DLC. If you pick up the game today for its $20 price, which you shouldn't by the way, you at least have enough in-game currency to buy all of these DLC characters outright. But that wasn't the case when the game launched. Some of these DLC characters tied into the Hobbit movies, which were releasing around the time when this game was. It's no coincidence that most of the Lord of the Rings games have dropped Lord of the Rings from the title in recent years, in an attempt to make the larger Middle-earth brand a thing. The aforementioned Bilbo was pretty fun to play. There were some dwarves too, I'm just not interested enough in the source material for it to really make a difference to me. It's a shame that this game appears to have been so doomed by its pricing model. I had some fun with it. A lot of the depth of MOBAs were lost in transition, but the plus side to that is that so have a lot of the complexities. If you've been buying Humble Bundles from the beginning, you may want to check your Steam account to see if you already own this game. That's how I acquired my key years ago. I certainly didn't get this game for its retail price. As a game, I don't think that Guardians of Middle-earth is that important, and given how quickly the game died, it seems that most would agree. What it is successful as is a proof of concept. A proof of concept that MOBAs don't need to be shackled to mouse and keyboard, and with the right design decisions, they can be made for controllers as well. Guardians of Middle-earth is an interesting piece of MOBA history that I'm really happy I played. I just don't recommend that you do the same.
I must gather my strength.